Hey, good buddy. I know you want some steak already, don't you? Hey, Josh. Long time no see. Hope everything's doing well. We mentioned I had a question about a hiking technique, and I think I was explaining something about I was helping some old ladies on a trail. So the concept is basically it could be on stairs or on rock or whatever. No, leave it alone. When the hiking is like steps, when you're stepping off and down, it's different on a hill. So instead of landing at the level surface that your other foot is on, your stepping foot is landing below the level that your current foot is on, and that's more impact than walking flat. And the farther that impact is down, the bigger the difference, the more the impact. The more the impact, the more the concussion goes through your whole skeleton, the more likely you are to slip on the ground if there's anything that's going to roll or something that might give. The more impact, the more risk of external elements failing you and also your own body. So the technique I was explaining to them and showing was that a way to make that impact less, even though you can't change the environment. The step down is that's where the technique could come in handy. Instead of just being young and fit, you know, if you're injured or if you're getting older or getting fatigued or whatever the case is, the technique that I'm going to show helps you minimize the impact or lessen it to a great extent. So if you think about stepping off of a rock onto another rock that's lower, whatever drop that is, that increases the impact versus if it was flat. Hey, buddy. So what you want to end up doing is trying to get that impact to be softer or not as far. And you're not really going to, put something down there before you step on it. You're just going to step into it. So the way you step, you have some control of how much impact you allow to happen. So I'll use this tree right here with these roots as a example of, I'll give a typical example, and then I'll give the modified technique. A typical way without any technique is just, a lot of people are just going to step, reach out, step, reach out, step. And what I did there was I kind of landed either flat on my foot or on my heel. That's kind of where the shoe, the youth comes into play in absorbing the impact. But I'm going to demonstrate a different way now. So typically when somebody steps down, they're just going to step off and drop and kind of land. So whatever impact of their weight and the drop is just, Newton's theories or whatever. It's all impact and it's more risk. So a way to minimize that is going to be something like, instead of reaching and landing flat on your foot or on your heel, you're gonna step out, reach with the ball of your foot, and land on that. So then, whatever distance you're able to reach your foot, let's say it's 3 inches or 4 inches, you basically take that much distance off of the drop. But then you add your ankle joint as another shock absorber. So now you're getting 50% more shock absorption because you're adding a third joint instead of just your knee and your hip. You're adding your ankle as well. So you're taking some distance off by reaching, which lowers impact. You're adding another joint, which helps absorb impact. And it's going to be a less, impact and concussion on your whole body. You're probably going to feel it mostly in your knees though. So I'll try to give a sideways demonstration. Maybe it'll show up a little better. So instead of landing here, I'm going to reach and land here. So this is a lot less impact than this. So reaching and stepping. So stepping off onto like a locked out leg and dropping far is terrible. Stepping out onto a slightly bent leg that bends even more is better. But reaching with the ball of your foot, adding your ankle as an absorber, and having all of that absorb is even better yet. whatever length your foot can reach. It'll take that many inches off of the depth of the step. So if I have like a 8-inch step from the bottom of my foot to the landing of the rock or whatever, and then I point my foot, and if I take off 3 inches there or 4 inches there, now I have a 5-inch step or a 4-inch step instead of an 8-inch step. So that'll be less impact because I pointed my foot a little bit, made my foot closer to that step without actually having to lower my body weight, and added the joint of my ankle into the shock absorption of the impact. Okay, so that was kind of the main thing I helped him with. Reaching, notice my foot, my lower foot reaching, my ball of my foot hits, then the flat of my foot, instead of going flat like that. So I'm gonna reach and absorb, reach and absorb, reach and absorb. It's a lot more graceful, a lot safer, and you're gonna prolong the longevity of your joints doing it that way. So instead of going clob, 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 I'm going to go more graceful. So just practicing that, you'll probably notice, the first thing you'll notice is a lot less impact in your knees. That's usually where people would feel it. And then of course the muscles that are attached to the knees, sometimes people feel it in their hip. If you have to turn at an angle because you don't want to reach as far out for that step, then turning at the angle like I demonstrated that second time, that helps you not have to step so far forward to reach down, but it doesn't give you as much space to put your second foot now. So if you just go, let's say a 45-ish, then you have less distance to stride and some room for your foot. So one lady, she was like 80 something years old. She had very small feet and kind of hard shoes on. The trail that we were on had some slope, some just steep hill, and she had very small feet and her shoes were very hard. And I know she wasn't complaining about it, but her feet were definitely hurting. And she's just a tough old biddy. So when she was on a hill that was, not super steep, but it was a hill, I could see that was impacting her too. And her small feet were just jamming into her hard shoes. And she wasn't complaining, but I could tell it was affecting her. So I offered her another technique of how to descend a hill that helps minimize impact. So I'll try to demonstrate that right here. I don't know if I can change my angle. I'll try to demonstrate that right here. Okay, so she was, kind of stepping and hoping that she didn't fall. Typical example would be striding out and kind of like falling onto your heel and rolling onto the ball of your foot. Like sometimes distance runners run that way if they have good shoes. Okay, but that, again, is increasing the impact based on how far forward you stride, because that makes the drop farther. Okay, so the technique I taught her was, instead of kind of stepping out with her foot and there's a small gap between her knees and a big gap between her feet, I taught her to keep her knees together and only reach out as far as her foot will go with her knees still together. So that one looks like this. Try to make no gap between your knees by keeping your knees together, and you'll only reach out your foot as far as your feet will go without your knees coming apart. So if I can give that at an angle, instead of going stride, 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 keeping my knees close together minimizes the impact and the stride length. And the impact mostly goes away. So partly because you got your your back heel coming up and your ball of your foot going, and then you kind of roll onto that without actually, without much impact. So she felt both of those very beneficial to her. She smiled because she felt the difference. I think she said she was like 80, maybe 80 something. And she said she was never actually taught anything like that. She was just hardcore. So she's 80-year-old, still hiking. She had really small feet, and her shoes were, I don't know, old style, hard shoes that weren't adding any cushion to her impact. So I gave her those techniques. She appreciated it a lot. The other group of ladies that I helped was there was a guy who, an older guy who had some kind of a medical emergency, and he had like a harem of like 5 65-year-old hotties following him, but they were all doing that same slamming their foot down and stuff. And when the medics were getting a rest and the little convoy train for that fellow was resting, I took that moment to offer them that advice. So they all thought that was awesome too. I developed those techniques mainly when I was personal training, and I was helping my geriatric clients with stairs. But it applies to hiking. It applies to, well, the hill one with the knees close together, that doesn't apply to stairs. But there's a lot of techniques basically that, the more fit you are, the less you need them. But as you get fatigued, or you want to go farther, or you're getting old, or you got an injury, then there's a technique that can bring back the ergonomics that you don't need to be as fit. Therefore, you're less likely to get injured carrying a heavy pack. Though you're doing the same amount of work, you're doing it in increments that don't hurt so badly, especially over the long run. On the sand here, or snow, or whatever, it's not as dramatic as if it's, on to rock, to rock, to rock, which is probably the best place to practice it. But you could practice on a staircase or a curb, or something that has some kind of semblance of hiking. On your long downhills, especially when you got weight, those impacts are going to add up, and it only takes one of those impacts to slide the dust, or roll a rock, or roll on a twig, or something like that. How many risks do you want to take in a single trip? You're taking thousands of steps. If every step is a risk, and you got 1 in a million chance, and you're taking thousands of risks every time, you could minimize it by basically taking only the risks when you can't do these techniques. Then you're cutting your risks down a lot, therefore expanding your longevity. Also, with the less impact on your skeleton, your tendons and ligaments, so your muscle, the skin on your feet, all that stuff, less of that means less recovery time because of less damage. So therefore, you're going to be able to get back to it sooner. So I don't know if you've ever done any hikes that just totally kicked your ass. You were kind of hung up for a week or two, still recovering from the one hike. Well, probably you had a lot of weight and a lot of impact and a lot of distance. And it was just the accumulation of stress in your body that did more damage and took longer to heal. So if you give less impact, less risk, less damage, less recovery time. If that makes any sense, go ahead and try it. Each situation warrants a different level of technique, balance management, whatever. You're smart enough, you hike. So I hope that helps you out, and I also hope you're having an awesome day. Stay awesome.